Hey guys, what's up? It's Jason Sensational here again. So sorry for the lack of content on the channel. I've been quite busy recently. For any of you guys who aren't aware, the seasonal tournament is actually in a couple of hours from the release of this video. And I've been really racking my brains over my lineup. Playing a lot of games recently on ladder, and that content isn't really the kind of content I would want to put on my channel. My channel is a little bit more focused on building out creative decks and kind of playing them. And obviously that doesn't really coincide well with playing in a tournament. And especially one at the caliber of the seasonals. And so I'm kind of sorry for that. And I hope you guys, understand. But what I want to do for this video is just to update you guys on kind of what's going on, kind of the plan for this channel in the next week or so. And I would like to go over my tournament lineup to kind of talk to you guys about what I've been thinking about and run through what I'm expecting to see at the tournament. With that being said, I hope you guys stick around. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel, stay updated, things like that. And let's just jump right into the client to see what my lineups are. All right, so my three decks that I'm bringing to the tournament are right here, these three here. At first glance, the only one that you guys could guess, right, is probably this one. This is my Fizz, Twisted Fate, Encroaching Shadows Burble list that you guys might have seen me make a video on it, seen it featured in the Giant Slayer top 10 players to watch out for guide. But this is that. This looks like Tom Soraka with Tom as a champion and the region combination, but this is actually Tom Aphelios. And I'll talk about why this matchup makes sense. And of course, we have here Draven Ezreal, very standard. But let's just jump right in. So first list here is your Fizz Twisted Fate Shadow Isles deck. It is kind of a, oops, I did not mean to do that. What did I just add? Maokai? Yeah, that doesn't fit in here. It's a mashup between Fizz TF in PNZ and Go Hard. You'll see very reminiscent of the PNZ package with Fizz, Pick a Card TF, Burbles at the late end, and your 3 zaps, things like that. But it also works well with Go Hard because you are drawing a lot of cards in order to cycle through your deck. And so this kind of mishmashes them together. You have ways to clone your burbles with cards like Stalking Shadows and Fading Memories. And of course, you have your finisher card as Pack Your Bags, and you also have 2 copies of Encroaching Shadows. Now, the reason why this isn't some mishmashed meme deck that I'm bringing to the tournament for laughs and giggles is the fact that it actually has slightly different matchups than the regular Go Hard that are actually considerable enough that it actually makes sense in my lineup to bring this. Now, one of the main key differences between my list and a regular Go Hard list is that we're cutting some of the more anti-aggro cards in favor for some of our worst matchups. This version of the deck can actually beat Lee Sin, Zoe, Lee Sin, quite reasonably when the regular Go Hard doesn't really do that. This deck also can stand up against Tom Soraka, although still not an easy matchup, whereas the regular Go Hard can't do that. And I hope you're seeing a similar train of thought here, is that the fact that this deck does better in Go Hard's unfavorables, but loses some percentages of its existing favorables. Now, what I mean by that is that, this deck will still beat discard aggro, maybe not as consistently as it should be, but it can still do it. Against like scouts or pirates, it might have a little bit harder of a time, but it can still do that. And so this is kind of, you take a few percentages here and you put them there type of deck. But this is this deck. Second deck we have here is Tom Aphelios. And if you guys are aware of the TF Aphelios list that's been pretty rampant on ladder over the past 2 weeks, pretty much, this is a very similar concept. At least maybe like 30, 32 of the cards are exactly the same. And so you can think about this as a TF Aphelios deck, but just a Tom Kench. Now, the reason why Tom Kench is in this deck is for two reasons. The first one being that you can only run Twisted Fate in one of your decks. And so because Twisted Fate is in my Go Hard list, I can't have it paired with my Aphelios. And so I need a replacement champion, and Tom Kench kind of makes sense. You might also see people playing the Zoe Aphelios, Diana Aphelios. I've even seen like a Fizz Aphelios deck that all run a similar concept of tutoring out Boxtopus from Crescendum as a 2-mana 3/4 challenger. Now the second reason why I run Tom Kench, and well, before I say I run again, this deck is actually created by my good friend Kevor. You might know him as rank 1 on NA ladder, but Tom Kench kind of makes up for the weakness that a regular Bilgewater Aphelios deck has, and that's there isn't really a reliable way to interact with your opponent's champion. You can really easily control their followers with cards like Crescendum, Calibrum, and Gravitum, but you have a hard time removing their champions, and that's kind of where Tom Kench steps in. Being able to eat their champions and then having tools like Guiding Touch, Temple, Star Shaping, Sunblessed Figures to heal up your Tom Kench to pose as a really, really active threat makes this deck very, very scary and very powerful. This deck is at least as strong as the regular Twisted Fate Aphelios list, and I think Tom Kench actually makes it favorable into decks like Lee Sin Zoe. It gives you a lot better percentages against decks like Teemo Foundry, and overall is just a very strong deck. I wanted to bring a version of an Aphelios Bilgewater deck to the seasonals, and this is kind of the direction that I wanted to take with it. Finally, the last deck we have here is a very standard Draven Ezreal list. There's nothing spicy in this, there's nothing new in this, it's just the plain, bold, boring Draven Ezreal with worse cards in it because now that Farron got nerfed. And the reason why I've decided to come back to this deck is because I got scared. That's kind of the short answer, but the power level of aggro decks within this meta, things like Scouts, Discard, and Overwhelm, are very powerful into some of the Twisted Fate and Aphelios lists by being able to just destroy them really, really quickly. And Draven Ezreal is kind of a counter to a lot of aggro decks. Draven Ezreal will do good into Overwhelms, it should beat Scouts, and maybe it's even into Pirates. And so having an anti-aggro deck kind of eats a ban from my opponent, and so on paper I could play my two strongest lineups, which is my Twisted Fate deck and my Aphelios deck. Now, I'm still scared to run into like a into a triple aggro list, but hopefully, my go hard list is good into discard, and Tom Kench should be able to or Aphelios can go toe to toe with overwhelms. So hopefully, I win one game each off of my matchups there, and this deck will eat a ban. The second pair of matchups that I got particularly scared about are Tom Kench Soraka and Teemo Ezreal. My other two lineups or decks don't really do too well into those two landmark decks, but Draven Ezreal does because we are running two copies of Scorched Earth to not only destroy their landmarks, but their game plan also relies heavily on a few core key units that we have tools such like Flock to really cheaply deal with them. And this deck is kind of a hedge against those decks. Now, what makes this deck a little bit awkward into our lineup is that it kind of has opposite matchup spreads against my other two decks. And what this means is that if my Draven Ezreal deck is left up, I have to beat an unfavorable with this deck, and I have to beat a favorable with this deck, then beat an unfavorable. Kind of thinking about it in a weird way. But given the randomness of matchups that I'm likely expected to face within the qualifiers because there's just so many players, having this safe deck that, has a pretty decent matchup spread across the board can be pretty valuable. This deck also kind of makes it in very, very specific opponents' lineups. This deck can make their bans a little bit awkward because if they're playing decks, if there's a lineup with both Teemo Ezreal and or like Fiora Shen or Tomcat Soraka that Draven Ezreal does well into, they have to think about if they want to ban my Draven Ezreal deck, which on paper is my weakest deck of the three, or if they want to ban one of my stronger decks but leave a favorable matchup into me. And so this is kind of a hedge into three different things. Of course, I could get really screwed over against very specific matchups as well if they have three decks that do very, very well into Draven Ezreal, such as Feel the Rush, most Aphelios decks, and maybe Go Hard, for example. Then I can just get O2'd from my Draven Ezreal list, and that can be very, very sad. But I think Draven Ezreal is very low key right now. No one's gonna be targeting Draven Ezreal like they might have if the season was like 3 weeks ago. And so this deck might just fly under the radar of a lot of oppressive lineups into it while having decent spreads into the majority of weird lineups out there. And that's kind of the reason why I've kind of gone back to this list. But that kind of wraps up three decks on Arena Seasonals, kind of talks a little bit about the matchup spreads and things like that. And so before I let you guys go, I just want to talk a little bit more about kind of my plans for the coming weeks. And of course, we're getting closer and closer to Shurima. So back to the face. So really quickly, just a timeline. If I make it into Top Cut, which is the top 32, that will happen in a week from when this video is posted, then for the week in between, there probably won't be any content on this channel, simply because I want to take the time to practice and just get very, very comfortable with my decks, or maybe even come up with one or two completely spicy and new decks that hopefully can do well against what I predict to be the meta. But that's that. If I don't make Top Cut, then for the weeks up to Shurima, I want to take a little bit more focus into some of the newer cards that are coming out because I really haven't gotten a good chance to look at them. And we can think about, maybe having some deck crafting or deck building concepts ready for the day of release. And I think that should make a couple of exciting videos. But that's kind of that. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say to you guys. If you guys are excited for the seasonals, be sure to catch me live at Twitch. The games will start at 1 p.m. PST, which should be in I don't know how long from this release of this video, but the games will be then, and I hope to make you guys proud because I know there are quite a few of you that are actually rooting on me, so I'm very grateful and happy for that, and I hope to at least make it to Top Cut for you guys. But that's kind of it. I thank you guys for watching and tuning in, and I thank you guys for sticking around because this channel has been dead for about a week and a half when I've been releasing 2 videos a week. And so I thank you guys for watching. Please like and subscribe. Stick around. Hopefully the tournament goes well. You'll see a lot of content surrounding that as well. Follow me on Twitter to stay updated on what I've been doing. I've been posting a lot of memes on there as well, so if you're interested in that, go check me out. But I'll leave it there, and I thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys next time.